I'm a young, radical black feminist. This is how I've been introducing myself to new people lately. And in general, when I introduce myself to men in this way, I get one of three reactions. There's the guy who assumes I'm probably just a man-hating lesbian, which is not true. You know, I can't possibly hate men when some of my closest friends are men. And then there's the guy who sits down with interest because he essentially wants to convince me that he too is a feminist. And then there's the third guy who makes the decision that I'm probably just another angry black woman. And thankfully for him, this fact about me is actually quite true. I am angry. For the DC Comics fans in the room, my anger has become kind of like my kryptonite. Depending on how I've channeled it, it has either served as a way to self-destruct or a way to channel positive impact in the world. Why am I angry? I'm angry because I grew up in a democracy. I grew up in a country whose democracy was founded through a culture of violence. And unfortunately for us, we never outgrew that culture of violence. We've seen it play out in many different ways in this country. We've seen the violent protests that take place. We've seen the crazy levels of inequality. Inequality is violence as well. But also, we've seen the levels of gender and sexuality-based violence that happens in this country. And one thing I thought was quite interesting was that, you know, even though I grew up in this country where I feel like we still have this culture of violence, one of the interesting things that has been happening is that, you know, we've seen these kind of like interesting movements that have been happening as a result of angry young women like myself who want to use their anger as a tool for political resistance. This is very important because for the longest time, our anger as women has always been reduced to just, you know, rantings of emotional, irrational women. Our anger was never seen as credible. We often see men get angry, but you know what happens when a man is angry? He's powerful, he's aggressive, it's leadership. But when a woman is angry, it's emotional, it's irrational. It's just rantings. There's no credibility to a woman's anger. But there's hope yet. Because we've seen in the last 2 years a lot of movements that were being driven by young women all over the country who were tired of having their humanities second-guessed. So they're using their anger as a positive channel, as a protest platform for new kinds of conversations, for new kinds of narratives that are actually changing the world. They're saying to the world, you know, anger is an active emotion. They're not just angry just for the sake of it. They have every reason to be angry. They're saying anger requires action. It demands action from them. So they're using their anger to activate in the world in all kinds of ways. We've seen this activation happen through the likes of Tarana Burke. Some of you may not know who she is, but she's the woman that initially used the hashtag #MeToo, that was eventually popularized by Hollywood celebrities through the Harvey Weinstein case. We've also seen this anger being channeled through the founders of Black Lives Matter, who saw like African Americans being killed and nothing was being done. Closer to home, we've seen this through the hashtag Total Shutdown movement that happened in August, on the 1st of August. Women all over the country of all races and LGBTI community came together and they were shutting down the country, demanding that the men in this country and the state take the gender and sexuality violence that's happening in this country quite seriously. Because the numbers are staggering. Did you know that just in the last financial year, femicide rates in this country have gone up by 7.7%. For those who don't know what femicide is women who are being killed by their domestic partners or people that they're in relationships with. 7.7% just in the last financial year. And the scary part is that even children, 40% of rapes that get reported in this country are the rapes of children. 40%. That is a scary number. And they can't fight for themselves. So as a woman living in this country, it means that I often have to talk myself out of socializing, out of going out, because I'm afraid that each time I leave the house, I can either get sexually assaulted, raped, abducted, or all of those things. But also the scary thing is that even when you don't leave your house, those things happen to you in your home with people that you trust. It means that every time I think about going out and getting into a cab, I have to think twice because I have to be in the space with a stranger who is generally a man that I don't know. I might not make it to where I'm going. It means that I often have to talk myself out of going for a run in my own neighborhood. I can't do that. And often we hold ourselves back, we suppress ourselves as women in the world because we're afraid that we're going to be slut-shamed. It means we have to police ourselves, we have to police our bodies because we don't want to be too visible. Because visibility carries such high risks for women in the world. So a lot of women have every reason to be angry. And a lot of us, I'm sure, have experienced this. When you're saying something quite passionately, and in general, maybe not always, and then you get a man saying, but like, why are you so angry? The reason why people don't listen to you is because, you say it in a way that puts people off. But my response to that is that people shouldn't give women reasons to be angry and then blaming them for being angry. There's nothing wrong with anger. Anger for women is survival. It helps women channel movements in the world. They're using it to change the world, to create a new status quo in a world where they feel safe, where they don't have to second guess themselves, so they don't have to second guess or police their bodies. Anger is survival. But also, for me personally, even having watched all of these amazing movements being driven by really passionate women who are primarily angry, but not just angry, I've also had to find a way to channel my own anger in a way that was positive, in a way that changes the world, so that it doesn't consume me, because anger will consume you. So in 2017, I started a content platform called Woke Project that eventually led into an event series called Woke Saturdays. The point of this platform was to invite people to come in and challenge their own ideas, right? So one of the fundamental things that I had to come to terms with doing this work was understanding that a lot of the behavior that happens in the world happens because of ignorance, of lack of understanding, of lack of empathy. So in this platform, we come together and we unearth the reasons why we feel the way we feel. What is the thing that drives our anger? And then we take that understanding and then we channel it in different ways. I'm sure most of you saw the recent case with Serena Williams when she was playing recently, and because of something she felt that was unjust for her as a woman in a sport that is still predominantly male and still predominantly white, she expressed her rage publicly, which is unusual for women, especially black women. And a lot of people they saw her as divisive. They saw her as throwing a tantrum, but she felt justified in her rage. And the thing that's beautiful about that for me is that in this conversation, she understood the cause of her anger. And was the inequality in the sport, considering that leading up to that, she was told not to wear what she wanted to wear in the sport. She's not getting paid the same amount of money as men in the sport. And there were variation of that other incidences that occurred leading up to that were not just about her. So she used her anger to speak for other women. She said, I am hoping that my going through this means that no other woman will ever have to go through this again. So she channeled her anger to make a positive impact in the world, to make a statement, regardless of the risks that she would have been called an angry black woman. That is something I was generally afraid of being called an angry black woman, a typecast. But regardless of that fact, she owned her anger, she publicly expressed her anger, and everyone talked about it. And women and some men all over the world could relate to her experience. And that's a powerful thing for me. So that's what we do at this event that I host, where we try and understand the essence of our collective rage so we can find ways to channel that. For me, my rage was born from seeing the violence that happens in this country. So I needed to find a way to activate and channel that and find a way to have those conversations so I can understand what is the cause. Why are men doing what they're doing? Or some men in this case. Hashtag not all men. So, there has been a global shift that has been driven by very passionate or angry women who are trying to reimagine and redefine how the world sees and hears women's anger. A tribe of women who are collectively using their rage as a superpower. A superpower. The people that love the Hulk, Marvel Universe, or Superman in the DC world is because of the rage and sometimes the anger that those characters are able to express. And for them, that's their superpower. That's their thing. It's Thor and his hammer. When he throws that hammer into the ground and then it shatters everything, that level of rage is seen as a positive characteristic. So what I'm asking is that even when we see women's anger, can we read it in the same context? That it's not just rage for the sake of it. That women's anger is nuanced, it's intersectional, it's complex. They're using their anger to try and find or ask people to be more accountable and create visibility for women's issues. That's not too much to ask for. It's not too much to ask for. So, if you take nothing else from this talk today, just take this. You know, women can use their anger as a way to protest. It is valid, it's credible, and it's changing the world. Their anger, or women's anger in this case, was never the issue. How it is perceived and received by the world is the thing that needs to change. Women are regaining and reimagining and taking ownership of new ways and taking ownership of their voice to try and create the freedom to protest. And that for me is quite powerful. That for me is reimagining radical protest. And that is valid.